Hallucigenia. The name sounds like a diagnosis, and honestly, it should be. This tiny Cambrian nightmare was so strange that when scientists first found it, they reconstructed it completely upside down and backwards. Flipped it, reversed it, published it, defended it. For decades, the entire scientific community was confidently wrong about basically everything. That's how bizarre this thing was. It had long, rigid spines jutting from its back, wobbly tentacle-like legs underneath, and a body that looked less like an animal and more like something a surrealist painter hallucinated at 3 a.m. We now know the spines were on top for defense. The legs were real. And the head? For years, scientists pointed to a large dark stain at one end. Turned out that was decay fluid, squeezed out of the other end during fossilization. They were looking at the wrong side entirely. Half a centimeter of pure existential confusion. 500 million years ago, this thing crawled across the seafloor, and nothing about it made sense. Evolution was still drafting ideas. Hallucigenia was the rough sketch nobody threw away. But if that broke your brain, the next one has 5 eyes and a claw for a face. Opabinia. 5 eyes. Not 2, not 4. 5, arranged across its head like a control panel nobody asked for. But the eyes aren't even the strangest part. At the front of its body hung a long, flexible proboscis, like a vacuum hose, ending in a claw. It used this to grab prey and pass it backward toward its mouth, which sat underneath its head facing the wrong direction. When scientists first presented Opabinia to a conference in 1972, the audience laughed. Actual laughter. Because it looked like evolution had assembled it from spare parts with no instructions. It was about 6 centimeters long, swam through Cambrian seas, and for a long time appeared to have no clear relatives. But science caught up. Opabinia is now classified as a stem group arthropod, essentially a very early cousin to insects, spiders, and crabs. We even found a second relative recently called Utaurora, confirming it wasn't a one-off accident, but part of an entire lineage that actually worked. It existed, it worked, it had family, and then it all vanished, leaving behind one of the most alien fossils ever pulled from the earth. And just when you think evolution was done experimenting with faces, it moved on to mouths. Specifically to a mouth that was also a shovel. Platybelodon. Picture an elephant. Now flatten its lower tusks into a wide, rubbery scoop. Now make that scoop the entire front of its face. Now give it a short, muscular trunk sitting on top of that scoop like an afterthought. That is Platybelodon, a real animal. An ancient relative of elephants that lived roughly 15 million years ago and looked like evolution tried carpentry. For years, scientists believed it used the shovel tusks to dredge water plants from riverbeds, scooping vegetation like a biological backhoe. Recent analysis suggests it may have actually used them to strip bark from trees, slashing downward and dragging the flat teeth across wood. Either way, the image is the same. A 4-ton creature using its own face as a tool. Not claws, not teeth. Its face. And while Platybelodon was stripping trees with its chin, something else was patrolling the water, wearing armor that had no intention of being food for anything. Dunkleosteus. No teeth. Just bone. Blade-edged, self-sharpening bone plates where a jaw should be, capable of snapping shut in a 50th of a second. For decades, we assumed this armored Devonian fish reached 10 meters long, a sea monster scaled from its enormous fossilized skull. Then, a 2023 study changed everything. Because the rest of its body was cartilage and never fossilized, we had been wildly guessing. The new estimate puts Dunkleosteus at roughly 3.4 to 4.1 meters. Not a sea serpent. A dense, tuna-shaped powerhouse. Shorter, chunkier, and somehow more terrifying for it. That concentrated mass behind bone blades generated a bite force estimated up to 7,400 newtons. Unlike teeth, its bone plates ground against each other constantly, staying razor sharp without any maintenance. Scientists found fossilized prey with shear cuts, not crush damage. This thing didn't bite through victims. It cut through them, clean, fast. A compact guillotine with fins. When Dunkleosteus disappeared at the end of the Devonian, the ocean paused before trying something that's strange again. But the land had its own experiments running. One of them was a worm with a face, and nobody could figure out what it was for 70 years. Tullimonstrum. The Tully Monster, found only in Illinois, named after the amateur fossil hunter who discovered it, and argued about ever since. This 300-million-year-old creature had a torpedo-shaped body, a long, rigid proboscis ending in a tiny toothed claw, and 2 eyes mounted on rigid stalks extending sideways from its body like a hammerhead shark, but worse. For decades, nobody could classify it. Worm, mollusk, arthropod? In 2016, a major study declared it a vertebrate, possibly a relative of lampreys. Then another study said no. Then another said maybe. The Tully monster has been the subject of more scientific arguments than almost any other fossil its size, because nothing about its anatomy connects cleanly to anything else that ever lived. It existed. It had eyes on stalks and a claw for a mouth. And we still don't fully know what it was. But while the Tully monster confuses scientists with its face, one dinosaur confused them with its hands. Specifically, its absurd, record-breaking, logistically unreasonable hands. Therizinosaurus. The claws were 1 meter long, each one, not the whole hand. Each individual claw stretching longer than most human arms, curving like scythes attached to a dinosaur that stood 4 meters tall and weighed 5 tons. When scientists first found the claws in the 1950s, they assumed they were from a turtle, because nothing about a 1 meter claw says dinosaur. It says nightmare. But here's the part that resets everything. Therizinosaurus almost certainly ate plants. Those weapons, those enormous curved instruments of apparent destruction, were likely used to drag tree branches toward its mouth. A gentle pull, a slow strip of leaves. 5 tons of dinosaur with the most intimidating hands in natural history, using them to garden. Evolution built a monster and gave it the diet of a giraffe. It is one of the greatest mismatches between appearance and behavior in the fossil record, though one other dinosaur gives it serious competition, because Deinocheirus was terrifying for 50 years until we found the rest of it. Deinocheirus. For 5 decades, science knew only the arms. 2.5 meters of limb, massive clawed hands, nothing else. Found in Mongolia in 1965, the arms alone suggested something enormous and predatory, a dinosaur that hunted and tore and dominated. 50 years of imagination built a monster. Then in 2014, they found the full skeleton. Deinocheirus was an ornithomimosaur, a relative of the ostrich dinosaurs, with a humped back like a bison, a wide duck-like bill, and a pot-bellied body that waddled rather than charged. It ate fish and plants. The terrifying arms were used for digging and foraging. The monster was a hunchbacked duck the size of a bus, 11 meters long, 6 tons, with a face built for scooping mud and a back hump that stored energy like a camel. Evolution had assembled the most misleading silhouette in dinosaur history. And speaking of misleading appearances, one last dinosaur spent millions of years growing a skull so thick it could headbutt boulders, and scientists still debate whether it ever actually used it. Pachycephalosaurus, the dome, 25 centimeters of solid bone sitting on top of its skull like a built-in crash helmet. This late Cretaceous dinosaur is famous for one thing, and scientists have argued about that one thing for 50 years. Did it headbutt? The dome seems obvious. The answer seems obvious. But bone analysis showed early specimens had domes full of vascular tissue suggesting rapid growth rather than impact-absorbing structure. Some studies said the dome was for display only. Then biomechanical models showed the spine alignment was actually perfect for absorbing head-on impacts. The debate never fully resolved. What we know is this: Pachycephalosaurus grew to around 4.5 meters. Walked on 2 legs, and carried the most structurally dramatic skull of any plant eater in the Cretaceous. Whether it used that skull to fight rivals, or simply to impress them, it spent millions of years building it. Evolution rarely invests that heavily in something decorative. Usually there's a reason. We just haven't agreed on it yet.